Unaware his wife was a billionaire's only heiress, husband and family, threw her and her newborn triplets out at midnight into the freezing cold. What she did next crushed them all. He didn't just raise his voice. In that small family house, her husband and his family stood by as he dragged his wife, still bleeding from childbirth, to the front door, shoved 3 crying newborns into her arms, and pushed her into the freezing midnight air, his mother and younger brother watching, his mistress smirking from the hallway. He dragged his wife, still bleeding from childbirth, to the front door of a small family house, shoved 3 crying newborns into her arms, and pushed her out into the freezing midnight cold air while his mother watched and approved. That night, Elise Laurent, who everyone in that house knew only as Elise Hayes, the quiet, ordinary wife, fell to her knees on the wooden porch. Her bare feet burned against the cold. Her arms shook as she tried to hold all 3 babies close to her chest. Inside, her husband Daniel slammed the door and turned off the lights as if she had never existed. He thought she had nowhere to go. He thought she had no one. He thought throwing her and the triplets into the dark would erase her from his life forever. What he never knew was this: the woman he had just abandoned was not just a wife. On every legal document he never bothered to read, she was still Elise Laurent, the only heiress of the powerful Laurent family. Years ago, her father had quietly placed a protection order on her name and bank accounts, one that would alert his people if anyone ever abused her identity or if she was marked as at risk. The same night Daniel went back inside to celebrate his freedom with his mistress, the last fraudulent charges he made in Elise's name triggered that old order. While he laughed, 3 black SUVs were already turning onto his street, following the digital trail of his greed all the way to his front door. As Elise whispered, "Someone, help," into the cold, a familiar voice stepped out of one of those SUVs and called her by a name she had buried for years. "Miss Laurent, we've been looking for you." From that moment, this was no longer a story about a weak wife. It became a quiet war, a war of evidence, bank statements, video recordings, lawyers, courtroom silence, and a downfall Daniel never saw coming. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Elise's voice vanish back into the cold. When you click that button, you stand with every woman thrown away, every child almost left in the dark, and every silent heart that chose to rise. Please subscribe now, and in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. The sharp cry of pain came first. Elise Laurent, a 27-year-old woman in her 9th month of pregnancy with high-risk triplets, pressed a hand against her side as a sudden cramp tore through her belly. Tiny baby clothes slipped from her lap and scattered across the floor. The moment was intense. Her breathing quickened, her eyes squeezed shut, but she forced herself to hold steady. She had learned to do that. She had learned to stay quiet about her pain. This was the life she chose when she married Daniel Hayes. Her husband, her mistake, her hope, all at once. As the cramp eased, Elise slowly lowered herself onto the soft rug and reached for the onesies she had been folding. They were small, pastel colors with little stars, and she folded them with gentle care, her fingers trembling slightly. She always tried to make everything perfect for her unborn children. They were the only warmth she felt inside this cold home. Everyone here believed she was simply Elise Hayes, a woman from an average background with no one behind her. Only on paper, on the documents Daniel never bothered to read closely, did her full legal name still exist. She was the only daughter of Alexander Laurent, a billionaire businessman whose empire spanned properties, investments, and private companies. But she had walked away from all of it years ago, not for rebellion, not for greed, for love, at least the kind she thought she found. Back then, she lived in a grand mansion with marble floors, gold-framed doors, and quiet halls where her footsteps echoed. She had everything money could buy, but she didn't want any of it. After her mother passed away and her father grew ill, the mansion felt empty. She wanted something real, something simple and honest. A younger Elise, maybe 12, stood beside her father in a quiet hallway. He looked tired but proud. "I just want a simple life one day," she had whispered. "Real love, no money involved." Her father had crouched to her level and touched her cheek. Then hide who you are until you find it, he said gently. Keep the Laurent name on your papers, but you don't have to live as a Laurent. Only reveal the truth to someone who protects you without knowing your worth. I'll make sure you're still safe, even from far away. At the time, she didn't understand what he meant by safe. She only remembered the warmth in his eyes. The memory faded as the present returned. In this normal house with small rooms and creaking floors, Elise had tried to build the simple life she always wanted. She introduced herself to Daniel as Elise Hayes, said she had grown up in a small town, and never corrected him when he assumed she had no rich relatives. On the marriage certificate, the name still read Elise Laurent. But Daniel never cared about such details. She married him hoping for devotion, kindness, and safety. But she ended up in the Hayes household, where love was something she gave and rarely received. The bedroom door swung open. Daniel Hayes, 30 years old, tall, impatient, and already dressed for the day, stepped out. He walked past Elise without a single glance. His cologne drifted behind him, sharp and cold. His phone buzzed. He stopped walking, checked the screen, and smiled. A warm, private smile Elise hadn't seen in months. Her heart tightened, not because she wanted affection, but because she recognized that smile. It was the smile he used to give her, before everything changed, before he started coming home late, before he began treating her pregnancy like an inconvenience. Daniel, Elise struggled to sit up. I'm having a little cramp. Can you handle it? He snapped without stopping. I'm late. He was always late for something. Meetings, errands, unexplained trips. Never late to comfort her. He shut the door behind him. Elise didn't cry. She had learned not to. But the sting settled deep. A shadow moved in the hallway. Margaret Hayes, Daniel's mother, stepped inside. She was in her late 50s, sharp-eyed, and always judging. Her arms stayed folded as if permanently offended. You're still on the floor? Honestly, Elise, you're so clumsy, Margaret scoffed. I don't know how you expect to raise one child, let alone 3. Elise tried to stand. Margaret didn't offer help. Through the window, Mrs. Thompson, their elderly neighbor, watched with soft worry in her eyes. She often observed the household quietly. She never interfered, but she remembered everything. Times, dates, who shouted, who cried. It had become her private habit, her way of keeping a quiet record. Elise brushed her dress and continued folding the clothes, her breathing steady again. She focused on small movements, trying to soothe her racing heart. The babies kicked gently. She whispered to them, I'm here. I'm trying. I promise. As she stood, Daniel reappeared briefly to grab his wallet. This time he lowered his voice, almost hidden, as he answered his buzzing phone. Yes, I'll come tonight. His tone was low, secretive. Elise froze. She didn't hear what he said, only how he said it. Warm, eager, exactly the way he never spoke to her anymore. A quiet shiver passed through her. Something in her heart whispered, not loudly yet, but enough to unsettle her. Tonight, something is going to happen. And miles away, another phone buzzed with the same message. In the hands of the woman Daniel thought Elise would never discover. Daniel's car door slammed so hard it echoed through the quiet parking lot. He wasn't alone. A woman leaned into the passenger seat before he even sat down. Her movements were confident, practiced, like someone who had done this many times. This was Clara Voss, 28 years old. Beautiful, polished, sharp-eyed. She worked at Daniel's office as a marketing assistant, but everyone who paid attention knew she was far more than that to him. She was the other woman. The one who had replaced Elise in places Elise didn't even know she had been pushed out from. Clara grabbed Daniel's arm before he could pull away. Her fingers slid up his sleeve slowly, deliberately. You came fast, she whispered with a soft smirk. I like that. Daniel's jaw tightened, not in guilt, but frustration. I can't stay long. Elise is home. Clara rolled her eyes. Elise is always home. That's her problem. She has no life outside those babies. Daniel didn't defend his wife. He didn't even hesitate. Clara tilted her head. She's holding you back, Daniel. She always has. The words struck him the way she intended, like truth disguised as concern. Intensity softened into quiet tension as Daniel stared through the windshield, breathing slowly. He had grown tired of Elise's quietness, tired of her lack of excitement, tired of her heavy pregnancy and her constant needs. He didn't say these thoughts out loud. Clara already knew them. She had made sure of that, over late-night calls, private lunches, and careful questions that made him feel understood. She leaned closer, brushing her hand against his shoulder. Listen, you want a real future, don't you? Something better than bills, crying babies, and a woman who can't keep up? Daniel swallowed. He didn't answer, but silence was enough. Suddenly, a shadow shifted behind the bushes across the lot. Two figures stood partially hidden, Margaret Hayes, Daniel's mother, and Noah Hayes, his younger brother. They had followed him from the house, quietly, intentionally. Margaret had long suspected the affair. She only wanted proof. Now she had it. Margaret, strict and judgmental, watched with an expression that wasn't shock, but approval. Noah crossed his arms, nodding as if everything finally made sense. They weren't here to stop Daniel. They were here to support his betrayal. Inside the car, Clara opened her purse and pulled out a slim beige folder, sealed with a small clip. Here, she whispered, handing it to him carefully. Daniel frowned. What is this? Her voice dropped, turning cold. It's what you must do when she gives birth. My friend in legal drafted the basics. Most of it is just copies of forms, but the summary is clear. Your family deserves better. His breath caught. He didn't open the folder yet. He didn't need to. The message was clear. Outside the car, Margaret watched with satisfaction. As Daniel took the folder, she quietly placed a hand on Noah's arm. This is for the best, she murmured. We'll help him through it. Elise was never right for this family. Noah nodded sharply. She never belonged. Daniel placed the folder on the dashboard, but his eyes lingered on it. A future without Elise. A future without her babies. Clara made it sound almost logical. Clara smiled, her tone smooth and dangerous. Once the babies come, you cut her off. Clean and simple. These documents outline it. Start with financial distance, then emotional pressure. She's already weak. She won't fight. Daniel didn't speak. He didn't object. He just breathed out slowly, as if accepting a plan that was already half complete. The silence in the car grew heavier. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to say something. Maybe doubt, maybe fear, but Clara placed a finger on his lips. Tonight, she whispered, everything starts tonight. Take this home, look through it, and keep it where she'll never look. We'll finish the plan after her delivery. Intense tension thickened again. Outside, Margaret and Noah quietly stepped back, moving like shadows disappearing into the wind. They had heard enough. They were satisfied. The betrayal was no longer accidental. It was a coordinated plan that now involved the whole Hayes family. Daniel started the car. Clara reached for his hand, and just before she kissed his cheek, she whispered, "She'll never see it coming." What none of them knew, what Clara didn't expect, was that the folder Daniel balanced so carelessly on the dashboard would later fall into Elise's hands, and it would change everything. The front door burst open with a force that shook the air inside the small living room. Daniel Hayes strode in, his face slightly flushed from the secret meeting he'd just had. He moved quickly, almost nervously, wiping a smudge from his shirt as if trying to erase evidence of where he had been. In his hand was the beige folder Clara had given him, thin, deadly, and full of truths Elise was never meant to see. He tossed it onto the dining table, careless, confident it would stay unread, and headed straight to the bathroom. The shower started instantly, loud and steaming. The house felt quiet, and that silence carried the weight of something dangerous. Elise Laurent stood in the kitchen, leaning on the counter. Her back ached, and her belly felt heavy and tight. The babies had been restless all morning, and she could feel their little feet pressing against her ribs. A spoon she had been using slipped from her hand and rolled across the floor. She lowered herself slowly, carefully, bending with difficulty. It took effort. Every movement did now, but she managed to reach it. As she stood back up, something caught her eye. A folder. Her name written across the top in Daniel's handwriting. Not Elise Hayes. Elise Laurent. Her heart gave a strange, uncertain beat. Curiosity mixed with dread. She didn't rush. She didn't grab it recklessly. Elise simply placed her hand on the folder, letting her breath steady before she opened the first page. Then the world tilted. Bank statements, large withdrawals, luxury charges, all linked to Clara Voss, the woman she had only seen once at a company event, but had always sensed something off about. At the top of the statements, a small symbol glared back at her, the discreet crest of her father's private bank. Accounts she had intentionally left untouched for years. Yet the dates of the charges were recent. Elise blinked slowly. No, that can't. She turned the page. Hotel receipts, multiple dates, multiple nights. Daniel's signature at the bottom of each one. Her hands trembled so hard she had to sit down. Another page. A document titled DNA Testing Request. Clara's name was written beside Daniel's as the requesting parties. A note at the bottom, need proof the babies aren't mine. Tears burned at the back of Elise's eyes, but she refused to cry yet. Her body wouldn't let her, not when the next page cut deeper than all the rest. Plan after birth, separation strategy, signed by Clara, initialed by Daniel, noted as reviewed in Margaret's harsh, slanted handwriting. It detailed everything. Remove Elise from the home, limit her access to money, control the narrative with neighbors and friends, pressure her emotionally until she leaves on her own. Claims she was mentally unstable from childbirth. Her name, her babies, her life, turned into a plan, a strategy, a cold, heartless operation. Elise's breathing grew shallow. She pressed a hand on her belly, feeling a contraction tighten and release. Not yet full labor, but a warning. Her whisper came out thin and trembling. Why? Why are they planning to get rid of me right after I give birth? Her vision blurred. Her fingers clenched the edge of the table. She felt the room spinning, not violently, but slowly, like the ground itself had tilted and she couldn't find balance. A soft noise near the window made her turn her head. Mrs. Thompson, their elderly neighbor, had paused outside with her mail. She wasn't trying to spy, but her worried eyes drifted toward the house, watching Elise through the thin curtains. She saw Elise clutching papers to her chest, lips parted in shock. Mrs. Thompson had sensed something wrong in this home for months. She had seen Elise's shrinking smile, Daniel's late-night returns, Margaret's sharp tone. She couldn't hear anything now, but she recognized the expression on Elise's face. A woman realizing she was alone. A woman realizing she was betrayed. Elise's legs weakened. She sat down slowly, holding the folder to her chest as if protecting herself from the truth inside it. Her mind drifted, not to revenge, not yet, but to her childhood. Her father's voice returned like a whisper carried through time. If someone ever tries to destroy you, remember you are never truly alone. I left safeguards even if you turn your back on my world. Her father had known things, had sensed the world better than she ever could, and Elise suddenly wondered, was this the moment he warned her about? Another contraction hit, stronger this time. She shut her eyes, breathing through it. The babies were coming soon, too soon. She looked again at the folder, at Daniel's initials, at Clara's handwriting, at Margaret's approval, and something inside her heart cracked. She had no anger yet, only shock, confusion, fear. But fear has a way of turning into something else, something sharper. She wiped her face and closed the folder quietly. She knew Daniel was still in the shower. He didn't know she had seen anything. Not yet. And the house, already silent, grew colder. Outside, a shadow moved across the porch. Daniel returning toward the dining room for the folder he'd forgotten he left behind. Just moments before everything would break. The scream that tore from Elise Laurent's throat was so sudden, so raw, it sliced through the entire house like a blade. Her knees buckled. Her hands shot to her belly. A powerful, unmistakable contraction ripped through her body, stronger than any she had felt before. Her breath vanished. Her vision shook. Her fingers dug into the arm of the couch as she tried to stay upright. The triplets were coming, too fast, too early, too violently. The beige folder, Daniel's cruel plan, slipped from her lap and hit the floor with a soft thud, pages spilling slightly, but Elise couldn't even look at it. Another contraction hit, pulling a desperate cry from her lips. Her voice echoed down the hallway. Daniel Hayes, her husband, rushed out, not with concern but irritation. He had just turned off the shower, intending to grab the folder and hide it in his car. "What now?" he snapped, dripping water onto the floor. Before Elise could answer, a sharp voice cut through the air. Margaret Hayes, Daniel's mother, stormed into the room. Her face was twisted into irritation instead of worry. "Oh, don't tell me you're going into labor now," Margaret hissed. "You planned this. You planned this to trap my son." Elise gasped, gripping the couch with one hand, her belly with the other. I need help. Please, call an ambulance." Margaret stepped back as if Elise were something dirty. "Doctors cost money. You can deliver here. Women did it at home all the time before you started whining," she snapped. Daniel didn't move toward his wife. He didn't call for help. He didn't even look alarmed. His eyes darted across the room, searching for the folder, and that something arrived. The front door opened. Clara Voss, Daniel's mistress, stepped inside. Slim dress, perfect makeup, a smirk playing at the corner of her lips. She no longer hid her presence. Margaret had given her a spare key days ago for planning. "You're early," Clara said to Daniel, ignoring Elise's pain. "We weren't expecting this mess just yet." Elise stared at her, breath trembling. She finally saw the truth, fully, painfully, undeniably. Clara moved closer to Daniel, brushing her fingers across his arm. "This is why you should have ended it sooner," she whispered, not even bothering to lower her voice. Elise's heart cracked. Her body shook, not just from the pain of labor, but from betrayal so sharp it stole air from her lungs. Daniel stepped toward Elise, not to comfort her, but to yell. "You need to get out. I'm done with you." His voice struck her harder than the contractions. Elise stumbled backward at the force of his words. Her water broke, splashing across the floor. Margaret gasped, not in empathy, but anger. "Now look what you've done. Disgusting. You're ruining the floor." Noah Hayes, Daniel's younger brother, appeared in the doorway. He took one quick look at Elise and scoffed. "She's making a scene. She always does." The room blurred. Elise fell to her knees, gripping the rug. Time lost its shape. Minutes stretched and twisted between contractions. No one called emergency services. No one brought a towel without complaining about the mess. Through pain, terror, and shaking, Elise delivered the first baby. Then, after more long, breathless minutes, the second, then the third. Her screams turned to hoarse cries, then to weak gasps. She was barely conscious, drenched in sweat, her breath shallow and broken. Daniel picked up the newborns with careless hands, holding them like objects instead of fragile lives. He wrapped them in thin blankets, shoved them into Elise's trembling arms, and pulled her toward the front door. She tried to hold her babies close, but her arms felt too weak. "No, please, not outside." Daniel didn't listen. He dragged her across the porch, opened the door, and pushed her out so hard she nearly fell forward. Margaret smirked from the hallway. Noah watched with cold amusement. Clara twirled a strand of her hair, satisfied and unbothered by the cries of the newborns. Daniel's final words before the door slammed in her face. "You're not my problem anymore." The door shut with a violent, echoing slam. The sound thundered through Elise's chest. On the wall beside the door, the digital clock glowed 12:03 a.m. It was officially past midnight, barefoot, weak, blood on her legs, 3 wailing infants clutched in her shaking arms. The night air cold enough to sting her skin. She stood there trying to stay upright, and then her knees gave out. She collapsed onto the wooden porch, curling around her babies as best she could. Inside the Hayes home, lights flicked off one by one, as if erasing her existence from their world. Across the street, Mrs. Thompson, the elderly neighbor, crouched behind her curtain. She held her phone up with trembling hands. She was recording everything, every cruel word, every action, every moment. Proof, truth, justice, waiting. Her finger hovered over the emergency call button, but the sight of Elise collapsing made her start by gathering evidence first. She knew whatever help came would need to see the truth of what had been done. Elise tried to breathe, whispering, "Someone, help!" Her voice cracked. Her eyes fluttered. Her grip on her babies loosened. The world blurred. And then, headlights. Bright, sharp, moving fast toward the house. Not Daniel's car, not Clara's. Something else. Something bigger. Something life-changing. Three black SUVs rolled to a stop, engines low but powerful. Inside the house, Daniel popped open a hidden bottle of champagne while Clara laughed softly beside him. He thought the night marked his freedom. He had no idea it was the beginning of his ruin. From inside the lead vehicle, a familiar voice spoke Elise's name, one she hadn't heard since her father died. The blinding headlights washed over Elise Laurent's collapsed body like a wave of white fire. The SUVs didn't slow. They stopped. Hard, precise, perfectly aligned in front of the Hayes house, as if they had rehearsed this exact move. Doors opened in one synchronized motion. 3, 4, 5 shadows stepped out, tall, structured, dressed in black. The night air shifted. Something powerful had arrived. Elise, barely conscious, tried to lift her head. The cold wooden porch dug into her skin. Her babies cried weakly in her trembling arms, their little fists pressing against her chest. She struggled to speak. Help! The first shadow stepped forward and finally came into view. Marcus Hale, mid-40s, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black suit with a security pin on his lapel. He was her late father's chief of personal security, a man who once guarded Elise every day of her childhood. His voice, deep and steady, cut through the cold. "Miss Laurent, we've been looking for you for months." The sound of her old name, her true name, hit Elise like another contraction. Laurent, her birthright, her bloodline, her past. Her father had trusted Marcus to protect her, and now, after years of living quietly under the name Elise Hayes, she heard the name she'd abandoned. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her. His face, normally strict and unreadable, broke with shock and grief when he saw her condition. "My God, who did this to you?" He reached toward the babies gently. "Miss Laurent, please, let us help." Elise tried to answer, but her voice cracked. Everything felt heavy, her eyelids, her arms, her heart. A second figure stepped out from the SUV. A man in his early 50s, clean suit, sharp eyes, calm presence. Jude Laurent, her father's cousin and longtime family lawyer. He had been the one who handled every part of the Laurent empire after her father's passing. When Elise disappeared into a simple life, he kept his distance, honoring her choice. But Alexander Laurent had left strict instructions and digital protections in place. Jude approached slowly, taking in the scene. Elise bleeding, babies half-wrapped, porch cold, door shut behind her. His jaw tightened. "This is worse than we expected," he murmured. He exchanged a quick look with Marcus. They had been tracking unauthorized charges on one of Elise's untouched Laurent accounts for weeks. The spending led to Daniel Hayes. The address led to this house. They had come tonight intending to confront a fraudster. Instead, they found Elise half-conscious on a porch. Medical staff rushed from the SUVs, 2 nurses, a medic, and an emergency attendant with blankets and equipment. But Jude stepped forward first, his voice firm and controlled. "Elise, your father's estate activates in full upon the birth of your children. The protections around you and your assets are no longer limited. You are now the sole heiress, with full legal authority over everything he left." Her heart trembled. Everything clicked. Her father's flashback, his warning, her hidden identity, her choice to live simply, the bank crest on the statements she saw in Daniel's folder, the reason her father insisted she keep her legal name on every official document. Everything suddenly made sense. Her babies cried again. The nurses gently lifted them, checking their temperatures, wrapping them in thick, warm blankets. Tiny cries softened as warmth replaced the freezing air. Marcus touched Elise's shoulder. "You're safe now. We'll take you home," he said. Home. The word felt unfamiliar. Where was home now? The estate she abandoned? The husband who betrayed her? The life she built? Or the life she left behind? Elise's breathing slowed, numbness replacing the panic. She murmured weakly, "They threw me out. Daniel, Margaret, Clara. They planned it. They used my accounts." Jude's face darkened. "What they did is criminal," he said. He signaled to one of the guards. "Record everything, right now. Get the porch, the blood, the door, the angle of the cameras on the street. We'll secure Mrs. Thompson's video once we identify her. The medic placed an oxygen mask on Elise. Warmth wrapped around her as more blankets covered her trembling body. Marcus lifted her gently. Elise opened her eyes just long enough to see the Hayes' windows. Through a narrow gap in the curtain, she saw movement. Margaret pulling Clara deeper into the house. Noah laughing nervously. All of them thinking the house was closed and the danger stayed outside. They had no idea who just arrived. They had no idea what Elise truly was. Jude leaned close, his voice steady. We'll get you to a private clinic. The babies will be monitored constantly. Your father's protections were built for exactly this kind of betrayal. You don't have to fight alone anymore. Elise swallowed painfully. Her eyes dropped to her babies, safe in warm arms, gently rocked, cared for as they deserved. She saw their tiny faces, their innocence, their future. She inhaled deeply, not anger, not revenge, not yet, just clarity. I won't let them hurt us again, she whispered. Jude nodded. Then we begin quietly, he said. Marcus carried her toward the SUV. The medical staff followed closely, cradling the triplets as if they were royal infants. As the doors shut, Elise stared at the Hayes house one final time. She wasn't powerless anymore. She wasn't alone. She wasn't the woman they discarded. She was Elise Laurent, heiress, mother, survivor, and soon, something much stronger. Just before the SUV drove off, Elise whispered, "They won't see what's coming." Inside the SUV, an investigator turned on her tablet, revealing a file labeled Operation Evidence Collection, Hayes Household. The moment Elise Laurent opened her eyes, the room was already moving around her, fast, controlled, urgent. Medical machines beeped softly. Warm light replaced the harsh cold of the porch. Nurses adjusted IV lines. A medic reached for her wrist to check her pulse. Her newborn triplets lay in clear, warm incubators only a few feet away, tiny bodies rising and falling with fragile breaths. This was not a public hospital. This was a private Laurent clinic, discreet, protected, paid for long ago by a father who had planned ahead. But the true intensity came from the door. It opened with purpose. Marcus Hale, her father's former head of security, stepped inside with firm strides. Jude Laurent, the family lawyer and her father's cousin, followed right behind him, a file in his hand. Jude's voice was low but sharp. "Elise, we don't have much time." The words struck like cold lightning. Elise tried to sit up, wincing as pain shot through her abdomen. Marcus gently supported her back as she steadied herself. What happened to the babies?" she whispered, fear tightening her throat. "Safe," Marcus answered immediately. "Stable, warm. Their breathing is being monitored. You saved them by holding on as long as you did." Elise closed her eyes for a moment, relief washing over her like warm water. But it didn't stay long. Reality crawled back in. The betrayal, the freezing porch, Daniel's voice telling her she wasn't his problem anymore. Her heart tightened, but she kept breathing. She had to stay calm. For the babies. For herself. Jude moved closer to her bedside, his expression grave but gentle. "Elise," he said softly, "your father had one last request before he passed. He told us not to interfere in your life unless you were in danger. Unless you were truly—" His voice cracked slightly, surprising even him. "Alone." Elise looked away, swallowing the sting in her throat. She had chosen to live simply. She had chosen to hide who she was. But she never expected her own husband and his family to turn her into a burden and cast her aside like she was nothing. A nurse adjusted one of the incubators. The soft beeping filled the room again. It grounded her. Jude continued, "The moment the birth of your children was confirmed by the clinic, every protective order your father set in motion fully activated. Your inheritance, your security, your legal authority. Everything became yours, not just in theory, but in action." Elise stared at her babies, 3 small miracles who had no idea their birth changed everything. The door opened again, this time more quietly. A woman stepped in, mid-30s, sharp eyes, calm posture, tablet in hand. Samantha Reed, lead investigator for the Laurent estate. Marcus introduced her. She handles intelligence and digital evidence. She's the best in the field. Samantha nodded politely and walked toward Elise's bed. "You're going to want to see this," she said. She tapped her tablet screen. A video appeared. Mrs. Thompson's shaky hands had recorded everything. Daniel shouting, Margaret's accusations, Clara's cold smirk, Elise collapsing on the porch, clutching her newborns in the freezing night. Samantha paused the video on Daniel's face as he slammed the door. Elise pressed a hand to her mouth as tears filled her eyes, not from weakness, but from shock that someone saw her. Someone cared enough to record the truth. Samantha's voice was steady. "Your neighbor sent this to us," she explained. "After our team loaded you into the SUV, I left a card with our contact email on her gate. She sent the video within an hour with a message. This is evidence. Protect her." Elise wiped her tears with the back of her shaking hand. Another file opened on the tablet. Hotel receipts, messages between Daniel and Clara, bank withdrawals, fraud alerts, Daniel using Elise's identity and Laurent accounts to cover his personal spending. And then the cruelest document of all appeared as a scanned PDF. Plan after birth. Separation strategy. Samantha tapped the screen. Once we traced the suspicious payments to Daniel, we checked his email and Clara's through legal channels. Their messages and attached drafts led us to this document. Elise exhaled shakily. "He really wanted to remove me." Marcus spoke softly, but with a dangerous edge. "He underestimated you, and he underestimated the Laurent family." Jude stepped forward. "Elise, we can take this to court. What they did, every word, every lie can be exposed and punished. We can file for divorce, custody, financial restitution, and protective orders." Samantha reached into her bag. She pulled out a printed copy of the beige folder's contents, the digital version they had recovered. Elise's heart lurched. Samantha lifted the papers between her fingers. Quiet, deadly, heavy with truth. Then Samantha asked the question that changed everything. "Would you like this presented in court or leaked first through controlled media channels?" The room went silent. Elise looked at her babies, then at the faces of the people who actually cared for her. Her voice was soft but steady. "Both," she said. "Court first. Then the truth can go where it needs to go." A spark ignited in her eyes, small at first, then growing into something sharp, focused, unstoppable. The quiet war had begun. Jude opened a secure briefcase filled with sealed legal documents and said quietly, "Then the first step is to serve him." 2 weeks later, the Hayes house looked almost the same from the outside, but inside everything had started to crack. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter. 2 credit cards had mysteriously stopped working. Margaret Hayes was more irritable than usual. Daniel didn't understand why the bank kept reviewing his transactions. He thought it was a glitch. So he opened another bottle of champagne, one of the last he had bought using Elise's stolen identity, and tried to drown the unease rising in his chest. Daniel Hayes burst into loud laughter as he lifted a glass of expensive champagne. His arm was wrapped around Clara Voss as they lounged on the living room couch. Clara kicked off her heels and smirked. "You're finally free from her," she said. "Now we can build the life you deserve." Daniel leaned back, forcing a grin. "Oh, she'll be gone forever by now. She doesn't have friends. She doesn't have family. She has nothing. She'll disappear." Those words hung in the air like poison, because outside the house, on the same porch Daniel threw Elise onto weeks ago, something far more powerful waited. The doorbell rang, hard, firm, authoritative. Daniel frowned. "At this hour?" Clara's smirk faded a little. Margaret Hayes marched into the living room in her nightgown, annoyed. "If this is that neighbor again, I swear." The doorbell rang again, louder. Noah Hayes peeked from the hallway whispering, "Should I answer it?" Daniel waved him off. "I'll handle it." He walked to the front door and swung it open, and everything inside him went cold. A man in a black suit stood in front of him, holding a sealed envelope. He was a process server, calm and professional. Behind him stood a silent wall of strength. Marcus Hale, Elise's childhood security officer. Arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes locked directly on Daniel. Daniel's breath caught. What is this?" he demanded. The process server spoke clearly. "Daniel Hayes, you are being served." He handed over the envelope, listing each set of documents as Daniel's fingers closed around it. Petition for divorce, emergency custody filings, civil claim for fraud and identity theft, application for a restraining order, notice of a pending criminal investigation opened by the Financial Crimes Unit. Daniel blinked rapidly. Then he started laughing again, but the sound was thinner now. That's ridiculous. Elise doesn't have the money for a lawyer. She doesn't have... And then he saw it. The crest, stamped in gold at the top corner of the law firm's letterhead, the Laurent family emblem. His laughter died instantly. His face paled. His hands shook. Margaret stepped forward, snatched one of the papers, squinted at the seal, and fainted right onto the floor. Clara gasped and staggered backward, bumping into a table. The Laurent family? As in, those Lawrence, she whispered, voice trembling. Noah's mouth fell open. You mean Elise? Elise and is... rich? He choked out. Marcus stepped forward, his presence filling the doorway like a storm entering a quiet room. Daniel tried to hold his ground, but Marcus didn't even need to touch him. His presence alone made Daniel's knees weaken. Marcus's voice was controlled and low, the kind of voice that promised consequences. You should not have touched Miss Laurent. You should never have used her name, her accounts, or her children. Daniel's eyes widened. His breath stuttered. His arrogance evaporated. I didn't know who she was, he stammered. Marcus didn't blink. Yet you knew what you did, he replied. Clara took another step back, putting distance between herself and Daniel. Her voice broke. Daniel, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't know she had a family like that. You said she was alone. Daniel turned on her. Don't you leave me. You planned this with me. Clara backed up until she hit the wall. I have my own life to protect. I can't be part of this. You can take the fall alone. Her eyes darted toward the security SUV idling behind Marcus. She realized something. Elise had power now, real power, and Daniel had just made an enemy he could never defeat. Daniel sank onto a chair, gripping his head. This can't be happening. Marcus leaned closer, eyes sharp. This is only the beginning, he said. Daniel shook his head violently. No, I can fix this. She'll talk to me. Elise trusts me. Marcus stepped aside, revealing the final document in the stack Daniel was still clutching. A court summons. Daniel saw the date. He saw the list of orders Elise requested. He saw the note about financial discovery and fraud evidence. His future collapsed in his mind. He let out a desperate, broken breath. As Marcus turned to leave, he said one last thing over his shoulder. See you in court. Mr. Hayes, bring a good lawyer. You're going to need one. The courtroom exploded with noise the second Elise Laurent entered. Not applause, not support, shock. Reporters rushed forward, cameras flashing like lightning. Gasps rippled across the rows. People whispered her name as if it were a myth suddenly walking among them. Elise Laurent, the heiress. That's the woman Daniel threw out? She had triplets, and he left her on the porch? Security cleared a path. Marcus Hale walked ahead, clearing space with a single step of his heavy presence. Jude Laurent followed close behind Elise, carrying folders stacked with evidence. Samantha Reed, the investigator, kept an eye on every doorway, tablet in hand. Elise walked slowly, carefully, still healing from childbirth, but calm. Her face was pale, but her eyes carried quiet strength. The courtroom bench creaked softly as she sat, hands gently folded. Across the room, Daniel Hayes was already standing at the respondent's table. He looked wrecked, hair messy, shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, hands shaking. His lawyer, Attorney Collins, kept whispering instructions, but Daniel didn't seem to hear a word. He stared only at Elise, desperate, terrified, confused. Clara Voss sat a few chairs behind him, sunglasses on even indoors, trying to hide her fear. Margaret Hayes gripped Noah's arm so tightly her knuckles turned white. The clerk called out the case details. Judge Avery entered, stern, experienced, and not easily impressed. Order in the court! Silence crashed into the room. Judge Avery looked down at the docket. This is the matter of Elise Laurent versus Daniel Hayes, he said. Emergency hearing for temporary custody, protective orders, and financial injunction. He paused, eyes scanning the stack of documents already before him. Given the evidence submitted, this hearing will move quickly. Daniel swallowed hard. The judge turned to Elise. Mrs. Laurent, do you wish to speak? He asked. A heavy moment stretched. Reporters leaned forward. The courtroom held its breath. Elise raised her eyes, then, slowly, she shook her head. No, Your Honor, she replied quietly. I prefer my lawyer speak for me. Her voice was soft, steady, stronger than shouting. Judge Avery nodded. Proceed, Mr. Laurent. Jude stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. His voice carried like controlled fire. Your Honor, this case is simple. We are presenting documented proof of abandonment, cruelty, fraud, identity theft, and reckless endangerment of newborn children. He handed a flash drive to the court clerk. Evidence, Exhibit A. The screens in the courtroom lit up, and the video began. Mrs. Thompson's recording, Daniel yelling, Margaret cursing, Clara smirking, Elise collapsing on the porch, clutching her newborns in the freezing night, the door slamming closed in her face. The room erupted in horrified gasps. Clara covered her mouth. Margaret's knees buckled slightly. Noah whispered, We're finished. Daniel's face crumpled. He whispered, No, please. But the video kept playing. Jude lifted another document. Exhibit B, messages from Ms. Clara Voss encouraging Mr. Hayes to force Elise out after childbirth. Screens displayed Clara's text. She's weak. Push her out. Your family deserves better. End it the moment she gives birth. Clara tried to stand and flee, but Marcus stepped into her path at the end of the row, blocking her escape with nothing more than his presence. The judge slammed the gavel. Sit down. Clara sank into her seat, shaking. Jude continued. Exhibit C, fraud receipts. Daniel Hayes used Elise Laurent's identity and her private accounts to fund his personal lifestyle. He held up bank statements, hotel stays, luxury purchases, withdrawals. Daniel covered his face with both hands, shoulders shaking. And Exhibit D, DNA test requests, Jude said. He held up the document. A request submitted by Ms. Voss, signed by Mr. Hayes, claiming Elise's children may not be his. Filed while she was still pregnant with high-risk triplets. The crowd gasped again. And finally, Exhibit E. Jude lifted the printed copy of the separation plan. The separation strategy document, written by the defendants and their collaborator, detailing their plan to remove Elise from her home once she delivered premature triplets. Judge Avery's face darkened. This is monstrous, he said. He turned to Mrs. Thompson, seated in the witness box. Ma'am, is this your recording? Mrs. Thompson nodded. I took it because someone needed to protect her, she said. Her voice trembled, but her courage held. Silence filled the room again. Judge Avery faced Daniel. Mr. Hayes, do you have anything to say before I rule on these emergency orders? Daniel rose unsteadily, tears spilling down his face. Elise, please, say something. Please look at me. Please. Elise didn't move. She didn't blink. She didn't speak. Her silence was louder than any words. Judge Avery lifted the gavel. This court grants the following temporary emergency orders, he declared. Full legal and physical custody of the children to Elise Laurent. Immediate freeze of all joint accounts pending full financial investigation. A no-contact order prohibiting Daniel Hayes from approaching Elise or the children, and a formal referral of the fraud and endangerment evidence to the district attorney's office. The gavel struck like thunder. Daniel fell into his chair, sobbing. Marcus leaned close to Jude and whispered, Prepare the cars. The press will want a reaction, and Daniel won't be the only one falling today. Daniel Hayes burst out of the courthouse doors like a man escaping a burning building. Panic pushed every step, his breath coming in sharp bursts. Cameras flashed instantly, sharp, blinding, merciless. Reporters swarmed him from all sides, shouting questions. Daniel, is it true you abandoned your wife and newborns? Why did you demand DNA tests? Did you use her accounts without permission? Are you afraid of criminal charges? Their microphones pushed into his face. Their voices hit him like blows. Daniel tried to shove past them. Get away from me, he shouted, but they didn't pull back. The emergency court ruling had spread through the public like wildfire. They weren't looking at a husband anymore. They were looking at a villain, caught, exposed, fallen. The courthouse steps were crowded with people pointing, whispering, judging. Daniel's shame burned hot across his skin. Behind him, Clara Voss emerged, pushing her sunglasses higher to hide her expression. She tried to slip away from him, but reporters caught her too. "Clara, did you encourage Daniel to throw Elise out? Is it true you told him to end it after childbirth? Are you worried about being charged as well?" Clara froze like prey cornered by wolves. Daniel reached for her arm. "Clara, stay close. We need to." She jerked away hard. "I am not with you. Do you hear me?" she snapped. "I never loved you. I didn't know she was a Laurent." Reporters gasped and captured every word. Clara backed away from him, distancing herself as fast as she could. Her voice broke. "I'm not losing my future because of you." She disappeared into the crowd, leaving Daniel standing alone, abandoned by the very woman he betrayed Elise for. A moment later, Daniel's mother, Margaret Hayes, stormed out of the courthouse. Her face was red with rage, humiliation, and disbelief. She pointed a shaking finger at Daniel. "This is your fault. All of this," she screamed. "You ruined our family. You embarrassed us in front of the entire world." Daniel staggered backward. "Mom, please." "Don't call me that," Margaret spat. "You destroyed everything. We are finished because of you." Her voice cracked under the weight of public shame. Cameras caught every second. Margaret turned away from him, clutching her purse like a shield, pushing through reporters without looking back. Then Noah Hayes, Daniel's younger brother, came down the steps. He took one look at Daniel, his crumpled posture, messy hair, shaking hands, and his face hardened. He stepped away slowly, literally recoiling. "Stay away from me," Noah warned. "You're toxic. I don't want your problems anywhere near me." Daniel's chest tightened painfully. His own family was scattering like frightened birds. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "Please, someone just listen." No one listened. Reporters kept pushing forward. People pointed at him. The world collapsed around him, and then, from the bottom of the courthouse steps, two men stepped through the crowd. Loan sharks, the ones Daniel owed thousands to, debt he had hidden from everyone, partly covered using Elise's stolen identity before the accounts froze. They approached slowly, deliberately. One said, "We've been looking for you." Daniel stumbled backward. "Not now. I'll pay you back." The second man smirked. "You said that last time. Then you stopped answering calls." Daniel's breaths became sharp, panicked. He turned to run, but froze when a larger shadow stepped into view. Everyone fell silent. Marcus Hale, Elise's security officer, stood tall at the base of the stairs. Black suit, cold eyes, arms crossed. No effort, just presence. Daniel's voice dried in his throat. Marcus. Marcus's expression didn't change. Behind him, two uniformed police officers approached. One of them spoke clearly, voice carrying over the crowd. "Daniel Hayes, we have a warrant for your arrest. You are being taken into custody on suspicion of fraud, identity theft, and reckless endangerment of minors." Daniel's knees buckled. He collapsed onto the stone steps. Not from force, from defeat. His body folded. His hands shook. His voice broke. "No, please. No. I can fix this. I just need Elise. I can explain." The officers grabbed his wrist and cuffed him as cameras clicked wildly. Clara watched from across the crowd, horrified. Margaret covered her mouth. Noah whispered, "This is unreal." Daniel screamed as they lifted him to his feet. "Elise, please, don't let them take me. Elise, please." But Elise was nowhere in sight. She didn't need to be. Her silence was louder than his cries. The officers pulled Daniel toward the police vehicle. As the door slammed shut on Daniel, Marcus received a call in his earpiece. His expression darkened, and he murmured, "Understood. Tell Elise we're on our way. It's time." Several weeks after the night on the porch, the courthouse steps shook with noise, sirens, reporters, and Daniel's desperate screams echoing through the air. Officers tried to hold him still by the police vehicle, but Daniel Hayes kept thrashing, pulling against the cuffs, begging, shouting, losing every last piece of pride he once had. Please, I need to see her, he cried, voice cracking. Elise! Elise, please, just look at me. His knees hit the concrete. He wasn't standing anymore. He was kneeling, broken, defeated, exposed to the world. Flashes from cameras lit up the scene like lightning. Then, a black SUV rolled to a stop at the bottom of the courthouse steps. Silence fell instantly. Reporters lowered their microphones. Officers paused. Even Daniel froze, breaths sharp and uneven. The back door of the SUV opened, and Elise Laurent stepped out. She held one of her triplet sons in her arms, wrapped in a soft white blanket. Two nurses followed behind her, each holding one of the other babies. Their tiny faces peeked out, peaceful and warm. After weeks in the protected clinic, this was their first brief trip outside, carefully approved, heavily supervised, and fully guarded. Marcus Hale, her security officer, stood close beside her, protective, steady. Jude Laurent walked behind her, carrying documents and shielding her from any sudden rush of reporters. Elise was calm, too calm, a calm that came from strength, not silence, a calm Daniel had never seen in her before. She walked up the steps slowly, each step steady and sure. The wind caught her hair and the sunlight touched her face. Daniel looked up at her, red-eyed, shaking, covered in sweat and humiliation. Elise, he whispered, voice breathless. Please, please talk to me. She didn't speak. She didn't rush. She simply looked at him with a quiet, unreadable expression. Daniel sobbed harder. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't know who you were. I didn't mean... Jude stepped forward, cutting him off with a cold stare. You didn't need to know her family, Jude said. You needed to know her heart, but you didn't care about that either. The words hit Daniel like a blow. Reporters captured every expression, every tremble, every tear. Daniel tried again. Elise, please, say something. Forgive me. I don't want to lose you. Elise shifted the baby gently in her arms. Her eyes softened for only a split second. Not for Daniel, but for her child. Then she looked at her former husband, a man who threw her and their newborns into the freezing night, a man who planned her removal before she ever gave birth, a man who used her name, her accounts, her trust. A man now kneeling in front of her, begging for mercy he had never shown. The world leaned in, waiting for her to speak. Elise inhaled, slow, steady, and finally broke her silence. Her voice was gentle, low, calm. You threw me into the cold, she said softly, but I found the warmth myself. Daniel's face collapsed. His mouth fell open in disbelief. She turned away before he could respond. No, Elise, please, don't go. Don't take my children. Please. He tried to lunge forward, but the officers pulled him back sharply. He screamed, voice breaking, echoing across the courthouse steps. Elise, I'm begging you. Please, please don't leave me. She never looked back. Not once. She walked down the steps with grace, her triplets safe in the arms of the nurses beside her. Marcus opened the SUV door. Jude guided her gently. Daniel's screams faded behind her. Reporters whispered in awe. The world watched a woman who had been thrown away walk away with everything that truly mattered. Elise settled into the seat, holding her baby close. The three infants, exhausted from the chaos, slept peacefully. Soft breaths, tiny fingers curled, faces relaxed. Her new life had already begun. The SUV door closed. The noise outside disappeared. The engine started. As the car pulled away from the courthouse, Elise looked out the window just once. Not to see Daniel, but to see the sky. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. Jude glanced at her from the front seat and said quietly, There's still the matter of the Hayes assets, the public statement, and how you want your story told. Are you ready for what comes next? Elise touched her baby's foreheads gently. Yes, she whispered. I'm ready. And the SUV drove toward her future. I hope you enjoyed watching this story as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. Don't forget to like, share, and comment on the lessons you learn. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.